And by the way, now I want you to present that in a look. I mean, it's very difficult to do, and it takes great talent.
What makes a director truly unforgettable? Some would say it's vision. Others might argue it's technical mastery. But for Robert Zemeckis, the man behind Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, Cast Away, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it comes down to something far more uncompromising: control. For over 4 decades, Zemeckis has engineered films that bend reality while staying emotionally grounded. He's a master of blending spectacle with story, creating worlds where cartoon rabbits share the screen with noir detectives, and time-traveling teenagers race through history in DeLoreans. Yet behind the magic is a cold truth. Not every actor can survive in his orbit. Zemeckis doesn't scream, throw tantrums, or create chaos on set. Instead, he watches, waits, and measures. If you fit his rhythm, you're golden. If you don't, you're gone. Sometimes without warning, sometimes without even an explanation. Some of Hollywood's biggest names, from Oscar winners to box office legends, have discovered that working with Zemeckis can be both the role of a lifetime and the last time they'll ever be in one of his films. Why? Because for Zemeckis, filmmaking isn't about loyalty or compromise. It's about tone, precision, and an unshakable commitment to the story's heartbeat. And if you break that rhythm, even slightly, he'll cut you loose. In this video, we'll uncover the stories of 6 actors: Eric Stoltz, Crispin Glover, Brad Pitt, Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, and Bob Hoskins, who collided with Zemeckis' relentless vision. Some were fired mid-shoot, others walked away shaken. All of them learned the same lesson in Zemeckis' world: brilliance isn't enough. You have to be in sync. Eric Stoltz was supposed to be the Marty McFly. He had the role. He shot for weeks, and entire scenes were completed with him as the lead of Back to the Future. And then, he was gone. Zemeckis originally saw something in Stoltz: intensity, seriousness, emotional depth. On paper, it looked like a bold choice. After all, Marty McFly isn't just a wisecracking teen. He's also the emotional anchor of a story about destiny, family, and identity. Stoltz could carry the weight. But here's the problem: he didn't have the spark. Comedy and timing are fragile elements. They can't be forced, and Zemeckis knew it. Crew members later recalled that Stoltz insisted on being called Marty, even off-set. He treated every scene with heavy method seriousness, avoiding jokes, staying in character constantly. That approach might have worked for a tortured Shakespearean role, but not for a breezy, time-traveling comedy. Even Thomas F. Wilson, who played Biff, admitted Stoltz's refusal to pretend forced him to physically push Stoltz in takes. After a month of filming, Zemeckis quietly shut down production. No dramatic showdown, no public humiliation, just a decisive reset. Michael J. Fox stepped in, and the rest became cinematic history. Fox's natural charm, comic rhythm, and ability to carry both humor and heart lifted Back to the Future into legend. What's striking is how Zemeckis handled it. He rarely speaks about Stoltz, never with malice, just with quiet acknowledgement that it wasn't working. It shows his philosophy. Directing isn't about giving every actor endless chances. It's about recognizing when the puzzle piece doesn't fit, no matter how talented. And in Zemeckis' world, if you slow the rhythm, you're out. Some actors get fired for underperforming. Crispin Glover wasn't one of them. His problem wasn't talent, it was philosophy. Cast as George McFly in Back to the Future, Glover delivered one of the strangest and most memorable father figures ever put on screen. Awkward, twitchy, and full of nervous energy, his George became an instant classic. But off-screen, things weren't as smooth. Glover wasn't content to just act. He wanted to debate. He constantly pushed back on the script, questioning why Marty had to fix problems with money, or whether the ending was too materialistic. These weren't small notes. They were fundamental disagreements about the story's soul. And while many directors might welcome that level of engagement, Zemeckis wasn't looking for debate. He was looking for alignment. When Back to the Future Part 2 went into production, Glover was gone. Instead of recasting outright, the studio used a look-alike actor with prosthetics and even recycled footage. The choice was controversial enough that Glover sued Universal, eventually settling. But the damage was done. He never returned to the franchise, and Zemeckis never worked with him again. What makes this case fascinating is the broader lesson. Hollywood thrives on collaboration, but not all collaboration is equal. Directors like Zemeckis operate less like negotiators and more like conductors. If one instrument plays off-key, the entire orchestra falters. Glover, with all his eccentric brilliance, played his own tune. It was mesmerizing, but it didn't match the rhythm Zemeckis demanded. In the end, George McFly remained unforgettable, but the actor behind him became a cautionary tale. With Zemeckis, you don't just play the role, you protect the tone. And if your energy disrupts the frame, no matter how brilliant, you're expendable. Few names shine brighter in Hollywood than Brad Pitt. By the mid-2010s, he was one of the most bankable stars on the planet, an Oscar-winning actor, a producer of prestige films, and a cultural icon. So when Robert Zemeckis cast him opposite Marion Cotillard in the World War II thriller Allied, 2016, expectations skyrocketed. On paper, it seemed like a perfect match. A legendary director of precision and spectacle paired with a charismatic star who could carry both romance and drama. But here's where things unraveled. During filming, Pitt was going through a very public divorce from Angelina Jolie. Tabloid headlines were everywhere. And according to insiders, his focus wasn't always on set. Rumors swirled about late arrivals, distracted energy, and a chemistry with Cotillard that never quite ignited. For a director like Zemeckis who thrives on rhythm, control, and seamless energy, this was a problem. Pitt hit his marks, said the lines, and did the job. But Zemeckis wasn't just after technical performance, he wanted presence. That intangible spark that makes a scene breathe on its own. With Pitt, he had to dig for it instead of watching it unfold naturally. And when you're Zemeckis, digging isn't the job. The camera should catch it without effort. The result? Allied earned mixed reviews and underperformed at the box office. It wasn't a disaster, but it didn't become the sweeping epic many expected. And unlike other collaborations in Hollywood that blossom into long-term partnerships, Pitt and Zemeckis quietly parted ways. No feud, no headlines, just silence. Meryl Streep is widely considered the greatest living actress, a performer who can slip into almost any role with uncanny depth. So, when she signed on for Robert Zemeckis' '92 dark comedy Death Becomes Her, it seemed like a brilliant match, but even legends can find themselves out of sync with Zemeckis' style. The movie was groundbreaking for its time, pioneering special effects that would later influence Jurassic Park and other CGI-heavy films. Actors had to react to invisible props, green screens, and technical setups that demanded precision rather than spontaneity. For Streep, who thrives on emotional authenticity and improvisational freedom, this felt stifling. She later admitted the constant interaction with early digital effects made her feel robotic, as if her performance was secondary to the technology. Zemeckis, however, wasn't trying to capture raw theatrical energy. He was building a visual puzzle, every frame carefully engineered to sync with effects that didn't even exist yet. He needed actors willing to trust the process blindly, to dance without music, so to speak. For Streep, it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was alien to her craft. The final product became a cult classic, loved for its biting satire and surreal imagery. But for Streep, the experience was draining enough that she never collaborated with Zemeckis again. There were no public fights, no harsh words, just a quiet recognition that their methods didn't mix. And that silence speaks volumes. If even Meryl Streep, the queen of adaptability, felt boxed in, it reveals just how demanding Zemeckis' vision can be. He doesn't adjust his filmmaking to fit the actor. The actor must mold to his structure. For Streep, once was enough. When most people think of Bruce Willis, they picture the swaggering, wisecracking hero of Die Hard. But in Robert Zemeckis' Death Becomes Her, Willis was asked to do the opposite, play Ernest Menville, a washed-up surgeon turned pathetic pawn in a supernatural love triangle. It was one of the rare times Willis leaned fully into comedy. And while the performance became iconic, getting there wasn't easy. Zemeckis wanted fragility. He wanted a man so broken that he almost disappears into the chaos around him. But Willis kept slipping back into his trademark cool. On set, crew members recalled Zemeckis giving dozens of takes for the simplest reaction shots, coaxing Ernest's awkwardness millimeter by millimeter. It was like trying to get a pit bull to act like a chihuahua. The clash wasn't explosive, but it was constant. Zemeckis worked with mathematical precision, choreographing every comedic beat to match the film's surreal effects. Willis, used to faster and looser productions, reportedly resisted endless rehearsals and technical retakes. The result was tension, not enough to derail the film, but enough to ensure this was their first and last collaboration. Ironically, Willis's awkwardness became part of what made the performance memorable. His earnest is shaky, unhinged, and utterly unlike any other role he ever played. Fans still cite it as one of his most surprising turns. Yet Zemeckis never called him again. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is often hailed as one of the boldest experiments in film history. It fused live action with animation in ways no one thought possible in 1988. At the center of it all was Bob Hoskins, playing the grizzled detective Eddie Valiant. His performance grounded a world where cartoon rabbits, ducks, and weasels lived alongside humans, and somehow made it believable. But what audiences never saw was the toll it took on Hoskins. For months, he was asked to act opposite. Nothing. No co-stars. No puppets. Just empty space filled later with animated characters. Zemeckis would feed him lines from off-camera, asking for hundreds of takes to sync with effects that hadn't yet been drawn. Hoskins pulled it off brilliantly, but later admitted it left him shaken. He hallucinated Roger Rabbit at home, even talking to the character in his head. His daughter begged him to stop. To Zemeckis, this wasn't cruelty, it was the future of filmmaking. But to Hoskins, it was psychological warfare. He had given everything to make Eddie Valiant real, and it came at a cost he wasn't willing to pay again. That's why, despite the film's massive success, Hoskins never returned for a sequel. He admired the artistry, but his sanity mattered more. The story highlights a recurring theme in Zemeckis' career. He pushes actors into uncharted territory, sometimes beyond what feels natural. The results are groundbreaking, but not every performer wants to endure the process twice. Hoskins gave Zemeckis exactly what he needed, a performance that made history. But in return, Hoskins left with a vow never to put himself through it again. In the world of Zemeckis, the future of cinema might bend reality, but not every actor can bend with it. Looking back at these stories, Stoltz, Glover, Pitt, Streep, Willis, Hoskins, a pattern emerges. Robert Zemeckis isn't a director who bends to personalities or negotiates endlessly with stars. He's a craftsman, almost an engineer, who sees film as a machine where every part has to move in rhythm. If one piece falters, the whole system collapses. That's why he can cut an actor after weeks of filming, or let an Oscar winner walk away without regret. For him, it isn't personal, it's structural. The story comes first, the rhythm comes first, and loyalty never outweighs tone. And while that might sound harsh, it's also why his films have endured. Of course, there's a cost. Some actors left frustrated, others scarred, and many never came back. Yet audiences rarely notice the turmoil. They just see the seamless magic on screen. That's the paradox of Zemeckis. His pursuit of control creates movies that feel effortless, even though behind the scenes, they were anything but. So what do we take from this? Maybe that greatness often comes with friction. That innovation requires discomfort. And that sometimes, even the most talented performers in the world aren't the right fit for the rhythm of a particular vision. Now the question is for you. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Do you think Zemeckis was too strict? Or was he simply doing what was necessary to protect his art? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. Because in the end, film isn't just about who's in front of the camera. It's about who's in sync with the heartbeat behind it.